What's up, everybody? This is Jeff Gamble, Indianapolis, Indiana, and we are live. This is the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, and we're going over law number 17, the law of priorities. Let's send out some invites here. We're going to get this started. Bess is with us. Amanda's on for a second. Hello.
Hi, Jeff.
Julie just jumped on from Florida, I believe. Hello, hello.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Hi, Jeff. How
Hello.
are you today?
Good.
And how's everyone watching? I sincerely would like to hear how you are. I'd love if you type that in. Also love to hear where you're from. So hello, Ignacio. All right. Haven't seen you for a little while. So glad you're here. And of course, Adrian and Julie. Awesome, you guys. So MLM, welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Law number 17, the law of priorities, as Jeff said. So accomplishment does not, activity does not necessarily equate to be accomplishment. And I think one of the priorities is to study leadership. It was Jeff's idea to do this class. He said, we have to teach leadership. And Eric Worre, it happens, agrees with Jeff. He says, there's three things that we do in network marketing. One is we sell a valuable product or service, primarily word of mouth advertising. Two, we grow networks of other people doing the same thing to use that leverage. And number three, we use our leadership to improve the productivity of the net worth that we build. Maybe that's why he's having John Maxwell speak at his December Go Pro. And that, I think, is why Jeff said we have to do these leadership shows. We have to get this material out, which, thank goodness, he is a certified and trained John Maxwell trainer. Also, he's with My Leadership Network. And I am Bess McCarty with the MLM Millionaire Club, also the shrink of MLM. We partner to bring you these lunchtime shows. If you are not yet a member of the Facebook group, the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, you can go there and request membership for notices, replays, free book, community support. So it's really a good group to belong to or to invite people to as well. If you're watching the replay, we'd love if you type in replay. And again, I would love to know where everybody's. Dave Witherspoon's from Ohio, are on, he says, on, okay. Welcome. Everyone who's coming on. Our purpose, Jeff's and my purpose, to help people grow, to educate, empower, and equip entrepreneurs and create independent servant leaders. And of course, to give back to the profession and help raise the bar. So grab a pen and paper, because here comes the law of priorities. The activity is not necessarily accomplishment.
So true. So what we're going to do is jump right into this. Jennifer's with us. Hello, hello. Law number 17, the law of priorities, says a leader is one who climbs the tallest tree, surveys the situation, and then yells, wrong jungle. If you've ever been there before, it's not a fun place to start, but it does happen. So learning these laws, it says leaders understand that activity is not necessarily accomplishment. This law determines our effectiveness. And one of the things that I was taught from one of my mentors, David Bird, is David Bird talked about, you know you're on the right track, you're doing the right things because they tend to be effective. You're going to get results from them. And I said, well, how does that work? He goes, well, the first thing is you have to find the half a dozen right things to do consistently that produce those results. And the main thing, Sergio's with us, what's happening? The main thing is most people do not ever find the right things to do. So he searches for these key performance indicators. He said the key performance indicators, there's probably a half a dozen things that make up 80% of what you should be doing. 80% of what you should be doing. And, this is true in, martial arts. This is true in weightlifting. This is true in, bodybuilding itself or powerlifting. This is true in, if you want to get good at tennis or soccer or football, there's probably a half a dozen activities that will actually make you much better. Now, are there 1,000 things you can work on? Of course, but there's a half a dozen that'll give you the basics, that'll give you that, that base level. And that's what you're really looking for inside of direct sales if you want to build a significant organization. So this law is the then instead of focusing on getting more done, a great leader gets the right things done. You know, inside of direct sales, a lot of times you'll see people, you know, well, I sat at home and I organized my product. You know, I labeled everything. You know, I've heard that before. I created a shelf for everything to sit on. All these different things, and, you know, none of which have anything to do with actually physically building your business. It's almost like we look for ways to avoid doing the actual work to build our business. I've been there, guilty both hands.
Yeah.
So if you've been there too, it's okay. Today, I will get the right things done. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. If you really want to explode your business, you want to sit down and go, okay, what are the things I actually need to be doing? The number of contacts you're making every day, that's huge. The number of actual presentations you're doing, that's huge. The number of, you know, promotion calls. We had a list, a number of third-party calls, either incoming or outgoing, the number of people who show up to your open house. Those were the half a dozen things that we focused on. And because we focused on those half a dozen things, and we knew something called benchmark, you know, law of priorities. Benchmark is basically the minimum standard in which the business starts to move. Now, isn't it funny that we'll say, hey, this is the minimum standard, and we'd actually put together an accountability call. An accountability call is nothing more than having these half a dozen, you know, we had 5 to focus on. We're going to track these 5 things. And then basically we say benchmark, and or you would actually say, you know, a number beyond that. We actually had people come on the call and we're like, this is the benchmark, this is the standard. And they're like, well, if the benchmark is 25, I'm going to do 10. I think I'll do 10. Well, 10 isn't benchmark. 10 isn't even a standard. 10 means you're not supposed to be part of this call because you're actually trying to do less than what's required just to break even. And it was really obvious. It was actually quite funny in a way. You know, the people who complained the most about not getting ahead were the ones who were actually trying to do less than what was required just to maintain what was going on. And I was like, you do understand. It was almost like having a conversation with, I don't even know, like a toddler the very first time. I was like, do you not understand? Like, we just went over this. And here's the thing. People are at their own place all the time. And they were like, oh, I guess I didn't grasp that concept that this was like the bare minimum to stay in. I thought I could do less than this. And, you know, Grant Cardone was talking about this. People always believe, and this is something, especially when you're new, your expectation, you believe doing less will accomplish more. And what I mean by that is you actually have a belief that you won't have to do as much work to get the result that actually needs to be done. And that's just inexperience. You just don't know until you've actually been out there in the field doing it, trying to get it done. The same thing is true, you know, in fitness. I've seen the same thing, you know, and true in a diet. People believe, well, I'm just going to cut out this one particular thing and I should be able to lose weight. You know, and I'll give you a math example. If your body burns 1,200 calories and you're eating 3,000 calories and you cut out soda, for instance, you know, I've got a friend that cuts out soda. And I was like, okay, so you cut out 1,000 calories a day, which means your body now burns 1,200 calories a day. And you're eating 2,000, which means you're over by 800, which means mathematically it's impossible for you to lose weight. You're just not going to gain as fast. So, you know, a lot of people will approach their business that way. And, you know, I really have liked watching Grant Cardone stuff lately because he breaks it down into math. He's like, look, if you want to make X number of dollars, here's what it is. You know, a year, here's what it is. A month, here's what it is. A week, here's what it is. A day. And then he breaks it down to an hour. And he's like, if you make this an hour, 24 hours a day, then you make this a day, then you make this a week, this a month, this a year. And I was like, okay, that's really, really easy to follow. And I love what he says in his video. He said, if you want to make this work, you have to make it simple. And I think that's one of the things Eric Worre has done so well, is just creating something that's simple, something that's easy, something that we can follow. And my question is are you doing that? Are you doing that in your business? Are you doing that in your system? You know, is it just a half a dozen things that you have to follow to make this work? I remember the first company that I was in, they used to talk about, there's only really 5 things that we do. We listen to audios. We read 10 to 15 minutes a day. We come to our events and we associate with great people. We go out and share what we do with other people, and we consume our own product. Those are the only 5 things we do. They're like, can you do those 5 things? And people are like, yeah. Well, then you have the ability to do this. So it was a really good comeback when people are like, oh, I don't know if I have time. We listen to audios. Do you drive to work? Yes. Well, then you'd have the ability to listen to the audio on the way to work. Do you eat lunch? Yes. Well, you'd have the ability to listen to the audio at lunch. Do you drive home from work? Yes. Well, then you'd have the ability, and you just kind of keep going like that. Those are something simple and easy to do. Then you have, read 10, 15 minutes a day. Could you read on lunchtime? Could you read, obviously not driving on the way home, hopefully not. Although, if you look around, there's a lot of people reading on Facebook and reading on Instagram and reading their email. I mean, it's insane. But, could you associate once a week? Those are things you can do, right? So, leading others to this law, what is required? That's the first thing you have to ask yourself. What is required to get done? Number two, what must I do that nobody can or should do for me? What do I need to do? And this is where setting the example is so important. See, in direct sales, it's not necessarily giving everybody else the order to do, but giving everybody else a clear path, the law of picture, doing not only what you say you're going to do, but doing the things that are leading the example for everybody else to follow. Make it really simple, really easy. What gives me the greatest return? There's only one thing inside of this industry that gives you the greatest return, and that's actually sharing the opportunity with a new person. That is the greatest return. That's it, period. There is no greater return. You can look at all the numbers, all the statistics. The greatest return inside of our industry is not setting up a sales funnel. It's not, rewording everything. It's not creating a new presentation. It's not a new flip book. It's just physically sitting with a person, finding out who they are and sharing the opportunity with them and saying, hey, do you know of anybody, who would be interested in either trying, using, buying, or sharing this program with other people? What am I doing that can be done at least 80% well as somebody else? And that's what's great. That's why this duplicates. That's why this scales. Another thing that Grant Cardone was talking about is, should you lease a house or buy a house? And he gave a really neat analogy. And I've heard this by only one other person. And ironically, the other person happens to be worth over $50 million too. Grant's worth over $500 million. But he said, you should lease the house you own and own houses you can lease. And I was like, okay, let me kind of think about that. He goes, well, the old way of doing it, people get rich, is get into a house. I'm just using my drink as a house. Get into this house and pay this off over 30 years and you'll get rich. Well, the problem is you have to live 30 years to end up rich, and not everybody makes it that long. Not everybody has that much time. He said, but what you could do is you could lease that house and you could own other ones. And what he was talking about is scalability. Scalability is your ability to duplicate and replicate a process, which is what direct sales is. Mm-hmm. You can buy your own product from yourself, but this is why direct sales says, go recruit somebody rather than just retail, because as a retail person, you're only gonna be able to retail so much. I can only, basically bring in so much to my own house to have everybody else come and pick it up. Now we have ordering and drop shipping. Alex is with us. What's happening? Now you have ordering and drop shipping, and people can come, online and order your product. And yes, you can have a lot more customers than you used to be able to. But if you use the retail idea, this is why we ask people not to open a store. Because if you open a store, you're very local. If you open a store, you're fixed, in one place. And it might take years to build the clientele locally who come and actually get your product and pick it up. But what we can do is we can duplicate our process by I buy a little, I tell somebody else, they buy a little, they tell somebody else, they buy a little. We're all connected through a computer number, and basically we just get a percentage of profit. That's direct sales. That's why it makes so much more sense. So am I doing something that somebody else could do at least 80% as well? As I can teach somebody else how to buy their own product and share it with somebody else. In the beginning, they might not be able to present perfectly, but they're able to present well enough that it could transfer to another person. And that's what we're talking about, is scalability, the ability to scale something and build something into large numbers. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. A lot of times this is what happens with contacting. This is what happens with inviting. Just because something works doesn't mean it'll duplicate. I can go out, because I have enough money, I can go out and buy a sign on the side of the interstate for $1,100 or $1,200 a month or whatever it is right now. I can afford that. I can actually buy that. The problem is that might work, but it won't duplicate. Somebody else is like, well, I got it in your town and I want a sign too. And there's only 2 billboards. So what happens when we recruit a third person? And, you know, I've literally had people go, well, we'll just build another billboard. Well, at that rate, that's going to take a long time for our business to get to 100 or 1,000 people. I mean, could you imagine if that was the way? Billboards all the way around the interstate, you know, it would just close down. Nobody would be able to see anything. It would just be billboards on both sides. That might work initially, but it won't duplicate long term. And that's what people don't have the ability to see right away, because they don't have that picture of what happens when it's 500, 1,000, 10,000 people. What can I do that can be doubled or tripled? What can I do that can be doubled or tripled? Talking to people, presenting to people. That's what we're trying to get done. This is a leverage question. What brings me the greatest reward? Again, the greatest reward is presenting to people, because if you present to people and you bring other people on who present, you'll start breaking pins. You'll have people start getting promotions. You'll have people start getting paid. And the greatest reward is not getting this to work for you. It's getting it to work for others. It's helping other people. As a leader, it is a terrific advantage to be in a place to choose what you want to do when you want to do it. That's the ultimate place to be. You know, the ultimate freedom is you have enough money to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it. You know, you can get up, you can shoot your alarm clock, you can get up at the crack of noon, you know, roll out of bed, you know, roll back over. It's totally your choice. Make Thursday whatever you want it to be. You know, if Thursday's a day off, you can make it a day off. If Thursday's a day to work, you can make it a day to work. If you want to just, you know, sit out in the sun, grab, you know, I mean, the ultimate is to be able to retire completely. And for all the people who told you no, grab 2 lawn chairs about 9 a.m., go to Starbucks in your robe, you know, have something on underneath, but because nowadays you never know. Go to Starbucks in your robe and, you know, something on underneath, and just sit outside at a Starbucks near the interstate and watch everybody go to work. And then go back home and go to bed. You know, that's the ultimate way to do it. You know, watch all the people who told you, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think, and just put a sign out, you know, in front of the 2 of you, you know, as you talk to a group of friends that are all retired, and just, you know, retired, and just have every age group there. You know, people would drive by as they're getting their coffee, going to work, be like, what do you guys do? What do you guys do? Oh, we retired. We do stuff people don't like doing. You know, we're in sales and direct sales and network marketing, and they'll drive off real fast. Oh, I'd never do that. I know, that's why you're not retired. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Bess before we go over some closing thoughts.
Thanks, Jeff. And want to say hello to Joyce, Sergio, Daikin, David, Carl, Thomas, Aviva, and Kareem. We're glad you're here with us. And if you know someone who could get, if you are getting value from this, we'd love if you hit like, share, comment. We'd love to take your questions, because in the end, we will take questions or comments from you. What's your favorite takeaway from here? What piece of advice? How do you set priorities? How do you not get distracted in a day? How do you stay focused on your priorities? And some people are sharing in other groups, other network marketing groups. We've gotten great feedback from that. So we love if you do share it in a group. Hi, Joyce. I see you. Your likes and loves there. Thanks so much. Okay. So everything that we talk about on here, we're really laughing at ourselves too. And every time we cite someone who we can laugh at, we've done that ourselves. Believe me. And John Maxwell said, when Eric Worre interviewed him, and he said, well, what's the hardest thing about leadership? And he said, Eric, the hardest thing is applying this to myself. So if you feel like that, if you feel like there's a lot of work to do on you, and you just don't measure up to all this stuff that we're saying here, you're in very good company. The hardest thing is applying all this stuff to ourselves. And we're going to give, in a little bit, I'll give some exercises. And applying this to ourselves and really making these, doing these things, that's the hardest part. I'll confess that my hardest part is outsourcing, delegating things. You know, I think, oh, I can do it, or I don't know how to find a person to do it well enough, or what are as good as I do. So that's my Achilles heel. Plus getting distractions on YouTube when I go to post on YouTube and stuff like that, and seeing things that's my second weakness. But the outsourcing, it said that if you, as a network marketer, I'll speak for network marketers, if you can hire somebody to do something for $10 to $20 an hour, you cannot afford to do that thing, like mow your lawn or maybe clean your house or do your laundry. Perhaps even you could delegate cooking or shopping. But if you can hire someone to do that, your time is worth more than that. So you can't afford not to delegate and to outsource. If you use your time that you're freeing up with that hiring that person, if you're using it to do presentations. Because as Jeff said, just doing personal growth work or organizing, that's what we would call support activities to the main activity, which is presenting. Of course, you have to get your 10-minute presentation in order. Of course, you have to learn the 7 skills. If that would all be support activities, but the money producing one, that is the number of presentations that you do a day. So don't confuse the other things with the money-making things. And once you get that clear, then you can afford to delegate and hire somebody who can do a lot of the other things that you can then turn that time into money. You can't afford not to, actually. A lot of people get stuck on personal growth work and they think, well, I'm not good enough. I've got to improve myself as a person, make myself attracting, you know, the law of attraction and all that. Or to be a good leader, wait till I'll start doing my presentations once I finish this book that Jeff and Bess are teaching from, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Once I start that, then I'll start my presentations, right? Or once I get real good at the skills, or read this other book on Tony Robbins. Okay, now I've done that. Well, I think I should read another book. There will never be an end, you guys. There's always a next step in perfection. We're all working on themselves. We're all a work in progress. All the top leaders, John Maxwell says it, Eric Worre says that. We're all working on ourselves. We all got areas. So the truth is that you can be of use to someone else. You can be of use to another person right now, even in your imperfect state. So why not? There's good you can do. There's people you can help. There's people that need to hear from you, even if you're not a perfected speaker, master trainer, teacher. People need you just as you are now. And yes, you'll improve on the way, partly by studying the books, partly by doing it, by doing the presentations. So if that's the one message I could leave today, it's go out and do the presentations, learn on the job. One way to make them more worth your while is to prioritize who you talk to. So when you make your list of people that you want to speak with, put at the top people who are the most influential people, who know the most people, who love people, are out there already. Another way that you can qualify them or see who to put at the top of your list is something that I learned from Jeff, and that's the 7 things to look for in a prospect. Number 1 is, do they have a job? Number 2, are they aged 24 to 45? Number 3, do they have communication, transportation? You know, a phone and a car. Number 4, are they married? Number 5, do they have kids? Number 7, do they have a house? Because those last things are going to equal their why. And number 7, are they hungry? Are they dissatisfied with what they have, or are they ambitious and want more? So those, not the only people to have on your list by any means, but those would be the people. If you have a list, those that would prioritize and make sure these are the people that I talk to first. And I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
So guys, with that, law of priorities is really about setting yourself up, doing the right things at the right time to get the correct result. What are the right things at the right time? Somebody asked me, you know, why do you always work out so late? Why I did that is because I started looking at my day and I looked at my energy level and I'm like, you know, if I work out early in the day based on how hard I work out, is what ends up happening is I spike and then I crash early. I don't end up giving my best effort to be able to affect the people. I don't have the most energy to be able to go out and talk to people. And the people who I find work out, you know, early on in the day, they crash early. They don't have the ability to be on the calls. These are the people that are like, oh, I fell asleep. I wasn't able to make your call. I wasn't able to stay up. I wasn't able to do this. So what I realized is I was no longer going to work out during prime time. You know, it just didn't make sense to me because of my energy level. Also, I like to eat. And one of the things that allowed me to do is if I work out late, then you have to kind of replenish your muscle. So I was able to eat, I was able to relax, I was able to watch a show, and then able to pass out when my body crashed, when mentally I was kind of done. It actually helped me sleep better. People are like, oh, I can't sleep. I'm like, well, your body's restless because you're not doing anything, in a lot of cases. I find this, very true with a lot of people. They're like, well, I have caffeine to stay up and I have this to stay up and I'm sugar high. And then I just can't go to sleep. I just can't go to sleep. Go in and work out for an hour and a half with me. Not only will you sleep, you'll think you're dead the next day, which may not be your objective, but I'm just kind of being funny. So that's how I worked. That's how I worked out. And then I was like, well, I really need to start reading. I really need to start listening. So what I did is after this call or after the show, what I did is I started reading so that way I could get the information for the next day. I started watching John Maxwell's events right after this so that way I could get the information for the next day. Some of the stuff he says, some of the insights he has on these lessons. Now, I've seen the lessons many, many times, but it's amazing how when you listen to listen, it's one thing, but when you're listening to teach, it's different. You hear different stuff. I was like, I don't ever remember him saying that. Well, it's not important until you have to use it a different way. So that's what I did following. The day prior, I kind of make a list of here's the people I need to call, here's the people I need to get a hold of, here's what I need to do. So I kind of have that done. I'm looking at my notebook. So I keep a notebook, law of priorities. I keep a notebook every day. So that way I know what I did. I also know what I need to do the next day. If you're not tracking what you're doing, and here's what I found, if you're not tracking what you're doing, you really have no plans to get ahead. If you're not, and I learned that from one of my mentors. If you're not tracking what you're doing, you actually have no plans to get ahead, because what you're doing is you're living by circumstance of whatever happens that day, you're going to get done. Not here's what I'm going to get done that day. What you do compounds. What you do compounds. If you're just winging it's going to compound. If you're specifically focused on certain goals, then all of a sudden everything you do is leading towards those goals. You're tracking it and you're going in the right direction. So, I have down this list, the tickets for September 22nd. We're printing the tickets for October 19th, the next event we have coming up here in October, the breakthrough event. The tickets are almost done. I basically am going to be printing those. Then, where's the event for November? What are we doing? Where's the event for December? What are we doing? And then when is the next convention all the way out in the end of January? We're kind of putting that together already. So think about this. I'm working on next year. If that gives you an idea of planning ahead. Now, I've heard, law of priorities, that the farther you plan ahead, typically the farther the farther along your income is. The people that I know that make millions, are not working on 2018. They're not working on 2019. They're out probably somewhere 3 to 5 years in advance of where they're going to be, what they're buying, what they're actually developing, and where things are going to be. So, I'm working on that to get there. So just law of priorities, how do you start? You start by, what are you doing today? Who are you contacting today? I always had a blank space. Here are the 3 people that I'm sharing the program with. Because that's the most profitable thing you can do. If you want to prioritize, the most profitable thing you can do is share this with somebody new. I wrote 1, 2, 3 every single day. Now that 1, 2, 3 is nothing more than the 3 people that I was going to share the opportunity of what I was doing with. And that was my only focus. I was like, I will find 3 people that I'm sharing this opportunity with, and I don't care who they are. In the beginning, I didn't care who they are. I didn't care what age it was. Obviously I wasn't out showing toddlers and squirrels, but I was out to share the opportunity with viable people that could see what I do. It was amazing when I had that goal of just, I'm going to share the opportunity, not I'm going to get somebody in, not I'm going to get to the next level, not I need to make $500, but my goal became the activity. My goal became what I was doing every day. I have to show 3 people. And all of a sudden it started out with 1. I just had to show 1 a day. Then it went to 2, then it went to 3. After about 3, then it was, I'm going to share as many people as I can. When I was going all out, when I was making the run, I need to show this to as many people as I possibly can today, because I might not have time tomorrow. Tomorrow, the people who got in are going to question what I'm doing, how I'm doing. I'm going to have to train them. So I've got to show as many people today as possible. That became a new goal. Again, I tracked it, and then I knew what I was doing the next day. So that's what I got for the law of priorities. I'm going to turn this back over to Bess for some closing thoughts before we wrap it up.
Right. Anybody have a question? Please type that in. Anybody have an insight? A word of advice from your experience? Please type that in so we can share it. Anybody have their favorite takeaway from today? Love to hear that. You guys. Okay. So applying this, You know, it can be hard to set what works against us with the law of priorities is when we confuse the activity with the accomplishment. We talked about that. When it's hard to constantly think ahead and make sure that everything that I do aligns with my vision. Like Jeff was saying, you can plan way down the head. So think, am what I'm doing, is what I'm doing aligning with my vision? Because that's your priority. And another reason that it works against people is they might encounter some uncomfortable or painful parts. But we can expect that 50% of whatever we set out to do, that we probably won't like doing it. You know, like tech stuff and admin stuff is not my favorite part. I'm a creative, I'm an artist type person. But I need to do that or delegate it, find somebody who can do that with me. And so Joyce says, her takeaway, I think, is to focus on revenue generating activities. Thank you, Joyce. And there can be a ton of distractions from that, can't there? Kids, the internet, someone trying to say, hey, let's go do this, let's go party, or can you help me move? You know, anything to pull us off, can pull us off track. Then we have to weigh our priorities. What is my priorities for today? Maybe it is to help the person move, maybe it's to stay with what I need to do today. But you'll know that in the moment if you ask inside. Okay, how to apply the law of priorities. Number one, revisit regularly your priorities. Make sure you're aligned and keep seeing, you know, is my activity aligned with it? Number two, identify areas in your life that are not working well and solve that, because otherwise that's going to slow you down, stand in your way, or even stop you from reaching your goals. Number three is review those 3 R's that Jeff started out with. What is required of me? What do I have to do, and how much of that can I outsource? Number two, what gives me the greatest return? And what will do that is when you follow your strengths and talents and use them and delegate the rest. Number three, what brings me my greatest reward? The personal satisfaction, and apply that to your team. So how to apply it is to review those and list what you do that doesn't fit that. List what you do that doesn't fit. Is it required? Is it bringing my greatest return, like doing your presentations? And is it bringing me my greatest reward? List what you're doing that doesn't fit that, and then eliminate that or delegate it or redesign it. Redesign it. So a professor began his class one day with a glass container, and he had 4 different sizes of rocks on the table, all the way from big rocks to medium to small to sand. He put the sand in first, small rocks, medium. Well, there wasn't room for the big. All right, so poured them all out, did the opposite, put the big rocks in first, and then the medium rocks fit themselves around it, the small rocks fit themselves around that, and he could pour in the sand. He could get all 4 of those types of rocks into the container now. And I found that's the way my day is. If I put the big rocks first, right, and do my presentations for growing my business first, and the marketing and doing the presentations first, and then letting the other things fall around it. I'll tell you, sometimes I can't always get the sand in, but no biggie. Okay, then maybe I'll get it in tomorrow. So put the big rocks first. And that is one reason that we teach a Sunday night class called the Quick Start Basics for Network Marketers. Those basics are the rocks. Some of you here are on that, a good number of you are on that class. I'd love if you type yes, if you're getting value from that, or even what value that you're getting from that. You're fairly new in the class, so it will take its roots over time. But when you put the basics in there, if you attend that class, for those who are attending the class, you're making sure that you get your big rocks in first, your basics in first. And I will put a link to that class so other people can take a look at it too. Back to Jeff.
And it's really, you know, when we talk about priorities, people are like, you know, some people's priorities, you know, are you know, they're like, well, my priorities are my family, my priorities are my faith, my priorities is this, that, and the other thing. And it's funny how you line up your priorities has a lot to do with what you go out and do, what you go out and do every day. So, you know, when you start prioritizing things, I love that story of the professor and, you know, him talking about, you know, these are the main things. That I've heard also, you know, the glass balls, you know, you're putting, you know, it's like some of these you can drop. Most of them are rubber. One of them's glass. You know, your health, once it's gone, it's gone. You can't necessarily get that one back. The rest of them kind of, you can bounce in and out, you know, families, you can mess up, you know, you can come back on that, you know, religion, or faith, you can kind of go off the path and come back onto the path at some point. But, you know, when it comes to health, certain things, what you prioritize, but it's interesting when you sit down and talk to people, what they prioritize, what they end up going out and doing. So it's a lot in what you believe. We're not here to tell you exactly what to believe. We're just sharing with you what's worked for us, what we've seen has worked for others. And we appreciate everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the shares. Thank you for the comments. If you have the ability to share this in a group, we'd really appreciate it. Put this in front of somebody new. That's what we do. Thank you so much. And like we say every day, we're here at the same time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, to bring you the show, to go over the next law that we're going over. And tomorrow is law number 18. So we look forward to going over that tomorrow with you. If you have questions, always, you know, feel free to instant message us or write us in the Facebook group that we have, the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.